Planned Parenthood is planning on getting a little strike back on the state of Arizona due to a law that they passed, and it was signed by Jan Brewer, that would basically ban all state and federal funding to the organizations because of the fact that they provide abortions. Now, as many of you already know, Planned Parenthood provides a variety of services, and only 3% of the services that they provide are abortions. They do cancer screenings, they do pap smears, very critical screenings for people who can't afford health insurance, for instance. So I love that Planned Parenthood is now planning on suing them. This is something that I believe is unconstitutional because people have the right to a safe abortion, and Planned Parenthood isn't doing anything that would ban them from receiving federal funding anyway. Now, in the past 2 years, and this is according to Reuters, 13 states have taken steps to eliminate funding for Planned Parenthood, and the organization has filed lawsuits in 6 of them, and Arizona is one of them. Now, what's really interesting about this story is how one of the Planned Parenthoods in Arizona was founded. The Planned Parenthood in Phoenix, Arizona was co-founded by Peggy Goldwater, who is the wife of Barry Goldwater, who is very conservative, a Republican.
You know, Goldwater was, if you will, the gold standard for really conservative Republicans back then. That's why Lyndon Johnson ran the ad against him when Goldwater was the Republican nominee for president, called Daisy, where you saw a little girl in the foreground and in the background, a nuclear weapon goes off. They were saying that Goldwater was such a radical conservative that he might actually use nukes, and hence he was so dangerous. So that was the very, very, very right at that time. And that his wife founded the Planned Parenthood in Arizona. In fact, Barry Goldwater himself took his daughter to get an abortion. Okay.
No, that's the most incredible part of the story, because he took his daughter himself to get an abortion, as Cenk just mentioned. And at that time, you know, they didn't have access to safe abortions. So as a result, Joanne Goldwater, the daughter, had to go get it on a cold table. They had to make arrangements.
Have a van pick them up.
A van pick them up. It was like this makeshift operation that is incredible to me. And you know, Joanne has been very outspoken in favor of Planned Parenthood, and she has said, "I will absolutely never forget that, her experience, as long as I live. That night was just imprinted in my mind. I wouldn't want any young person to have to go through it. It was a traumatic experience for me."
So those are the people who still remember how it was before Roe versus Wade. And they remember the nightmare scenarios we had in this country before Roe versus Wade. And so they want to make sure that we don't go through that again. It's just an interesting reminder of how far right the Republican Party has moved. That the guy who seemed radical right back then would be considered an absolute moderate these days. In fact, he'd be such a moderate, there's no way that they would ever nominate Barry Goldwater for president, because they would say he was way, way too liberal. Are you kidding me? Imagine a Republican presidential candidate today says, "Yeah, I took my daughter to get an abortion. What's the big deal? I believe abortion should be legal and safe." Nice knowing you. I don't think he can get elected in a Democratic primary.
Yeah.
Imagine a Democrat comes out and says, "Yeah, I took my daughter to an abortion. What's the big deal?"
No.
They would never say that, right? And they would never forcefully defend abortion as Barry Goldwater and his family did, and you know, being pro-choice, etc. So it shows you what's happened to our politics, that it's literally lost its mind. It's gone so far to the right when the country hasn't moved. The country's still in the center, which I think is to the left of Democratic politicians.